It's time for Live with CCO. We're on episode number 47. Our topic today is going to be uh, COVID-19, the vaccine injection codes, and we're going to talk about the different codes for the first, second, uh, doses, the booster doses, and what those codes look like, just to make you aware of them. Now, if you're out there and you're already coding them, then again, this may uh, be a lower level type of content. However, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't realize how many codes are involved, or even that these codes are available, or how they're divided up. So that's what our focus is going to be on. First, we're going to talk about the COVID shot itself. When you go and look, say, in your coding manual or whatever encoder that you use, I use Find a Code. The first thing that you're going to look up is the COVID-19 vaccine, and the area that is going to show up is going to be the immunization administration of the uh, coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2. And really, I would not look up vaccine, because you're not going to get it that way when you look in your search for the index of your encoder. You're really going to need to type in the word COVID or COVID-19, or even immunization will be your key words to get that done. Now, let's look at how these codes are divided up, because these are CPT codes, and they're divided per the manufacturer of the vaccine. And I think, I went ahead and underlined these because I wanted that to pop for you. But look, we've got Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Janssen, and Novavax. Those are the biggies that you hear in the news all the time. And you also probably have heard people say that, mine was a two-part series for my shot. And that's true. I think Johnson and Johnson's was the only one that was a single dose. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was the case. So, excuse me, let's look at the Pfizer, and it's the BioNTech. It's 001A through 0004A. Now, that range is actually based on the dose, not the dosage, but which injection you're getting. So the 1 is the initial dose, and then I'll show you, I've got it broken down, the second subsequent dosers, and then they've got those boosters. So don't forget, we have like a 2 package dose. You get the first dose, then you have to come back and get the next dose, and then they started the boosters, and that actually has a different code to it. So we have Pfizer, Moderna, the AstraZeneca. And notice also here for Pfizer, they have actually more than one. And you look and you think, okay, what's the difference in these? The first thing is that you notice that we have dosages that are different. And then the last two is the sucrose formulation. And there's some other things that are interesting about these. Let's cover that. First, well, I grabbed the Moderna first to show you what those codes were and how they're divided up for the description. So for Moderna, the 0011A, that's the first dose. All right. And then the 0012A, second dose, and then 0013A, third dose. So they're telling you that you have to have 3 doses for you to be covered. And then they came back with a booster. So the booster has a lower dosage in it, but it has a different code. So we're not like repeating the 0013A. We're actually doing a booster. And if you look at the codes themselves, you can see why there's a expanse in there. So they created that booster when it became evident that they wanted to start doing that. And it is a code that's farther away in the code set, 0064A as a booster. So all of the ones that are classified as boosters will not be after the initial dose, and not all of them need 3 doses. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to get, and the clinicians, before they give these injections, all of this content has to be written down. That is protocol for them. They have to write down who the manufacturer is, who the dosage is for, and etc. There's a whole list of things that has to be written in the chart, or captured, not handwritten anymore, logged in. Now, I did grab off CPT Assistant, and I'm going to show you some of the information, or where I got some of the content for today, is that it's going to, there is an additional tool that the AMA came up with that allows you to just type in the information regarding, who is, who I keep wanting to say publisher for the dose, who's the manufacturer for the dose. This was Moderna. And then also, is there preservatives? Is it diluted? And all this stuff. And it will literally fill out in the blank and then give you the dose itself. So this particular one, it was saying that the guidance for Pfizer and Moderna third dose vaccine codes, and then it lists what they are to give you some more information. So this is the content that you would get at CPT Assistant. It's very confusing. So you do have a lot of information out there, not only from the AMA, but probably if the encoder that you're using is up on top of it, they'll have this content in there. Maybe something that you have to purchase above and beyond your encoder, but hopefully you'll have access to that. I know CPT Assistant and Coding Clinic and things like those are usually add-ons. Now, the Moderna, we picked that as the example. So we have the substance. Now that we know the one area, oh, there we go. There is the link for the AMA, and I put that on the resource page for the slide deck. So if you're in the CCO club, you'll get to be able to have that slide deck and have those links. The code 0011A. Now, that's the description, the definition that's in the coding manual, in the tabular. And with our bubble and highlight technique, what we would do is say we would circle the Moderna vaccines, right? So they would be in the first bubble. And then on top of that, remember, we're still always looking for the content that separates. So the areas behind the semicolon, you will highlight. So this behind the semicolon is telling us it's the first dose. So 0011A is first dose. I highlighted that. And then underline the content that separates, these codes. So we have the mRNA-LNP, which is mostly just says it's a Moderna, but and all of them said spike protein, and that has to do with how they make it. But when I was looking at that AMA kind of fill in the blank tool to be able to get to the proper code, I noticed that one of the questions was it preservative free? So I thought, okay, that needs to be underlined. So we've got the mRNA underlined again. I didn't underline the spike protein because I noticed that was the same on all of the codes, and preservative free then I knew was pertinent. Now the dose would be pertinent if the first, second, and third doses were not the same. Okay, then you would want to underline that to give specificity so that your eye gravitates to that. However, boosters, you would definitely want to underline the booster. So that actually you would highlight because it would be after the semicolon. Now, the information that the clinician, when they give these injections, the substance has to be all filled out. And all of the information that you see here next, the manufacturer, the name, and then the NDC, the clinicians have to write or log the NDC for the drug. And then it goes on to note that has a dosing interval of 28 days. So you have to wait 28 days before you get the second dose. And I noticed some of them were 21 days. Now, does this make a difference for pulling the code? Well, it does if you're working with a clinician and they need to make sure that they have all of that content, that information. But the fact that it says 28 days, the thing of it is you may get a denial if, and this, I'm not positive about this, but this possibility that if this second dose is mistakenly given, say in 27 days or 26 days, it would be too soon. And I wonder if you might get some denials because it is dosing intervals of 28 days. I don't know that for sure, but those dates that they're given is logged, and we want to make sure that everything is collected accurately. So that would be something I would be very aware of. Now let's move on to what we looked at, the substance, an example of the substance. And I'm going to show you some more. But now the stick portion. So what are we going to give them? The substance. We're going to give them the Moderna vaccine first dose. And then you have to also grab the code for the stick. This is the same way it is with all vaccinations, right? The 91300 is the appropriate code to go with for the stick. And the description there after the code is the in the tabular with the code. I just copied that out of the encoder. And notice here, we don't have a semicolon, so I didn't highlight anything there, but I did underline that it's the mRNA, right? Just so my eye would gravitate to that. Was preservative free. The dosing, right? They're showing this is 30 milliequivalents, and it was diluted. Okay, so it's reconstituted, and intramuscular use. All of these are intramuscular, so that's kind of something that's not, we don't have to think about that. Some of them, when you do the substance and the stick, you would have to pay attention to this, but all of these are dosed intramuscular injections. But then I looked here at the guidelines, and it is stated that you would use the 91300 with these particular codes. I went ahead and highlighted that because, again, it was talking about which ones we're giving to the patient. And these are the guidelines that if you were going to test on these, and I can see these coming in the test, if not this year's exams, but absolutely next year's exams, this would be in there. Then if we're going to have that saying you do use these codes, this code with these particular substances that I highlighted, there's also the do not use. So you don't use 91300 with, and then I didn't highlight that because I didn't want it to get too colorful. And then we'll go and look at, well, what is 0051A? What actually is that? Well, I believe that would be a booster code, right? I don't know for sure, but I've got the information. Now, they also have with the 91300, the manufacturer and that information, and it says 21 days on this particular one. Notice that this is administration code that the one we looked at on the previous is not. It's 0011A, right? And it looks like it's the same. And then we have this. So we do know that there's differences there. You have to pay attention to all these little differences. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Hold on. I want to bring in some other information while we're doing that. Now, what does it look like to search this in the index? And now, again, I use Find a Code for mine, but I wanted to give you an example of how you're going to look this up in your encoder, the keywords to find them versus the manuals. And the reason you need to be aware of this is because now they're dropping new codes not at the same time every year. Some of these manuals are being updated in the middle of the year, like in April. That's a game changer. We didn't have that before. So your manual may not have the most current codes sometimes with all of this new COVID changes. Now, you can always go out to CMS and go online and see these changes and updates, but as the coder versus being a student, you have to stay on top of these changes. So the first thing I would do is I would not type in vaccine. That's too broad of a search. So what are we going to look at? We're going to look at COVID. So type in COVID in your search, and then let's look at what it gives us. Now, Find a Code does a great job of, you can highlight on the left what you want to show up in your searches, and then they're color coded, which to me is brilliant. My eyes gravitate towards color coding, so that's good. But we're not going to look under vaccines and toxoids. Again, too broad. But look at some of the other things that were given us a choice. We have immunization, administrations of vaccines, then a HCPCS code for the collection, so those tests, the COVID tests, and then we could look up COVID antibodies, and then notice this one, the severe acute respiratory vaccine. This is actually what we're going to click on to get the information that I was showing you earlier. But again, let's notice some of the difference. This is the immunization. So we have the substance and we have the stick. Now, there is some ICD-10 codes. We've gone over those before, and I didn't want to focus on that. The U09 is your COVID code. Now, look here. They went ahead in the search and divided up. You got your Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, just like I took on that one slide. And if you knew that your patient had the Moderna, then you would just click on that for your search. Very simple, right? And then it would bring up other information, which I've got some of these over here, but let me go ahead and click on this to show you what our options are. And this is how I got the information, the content for the slide deck. So although I didn't pick Moderna for that one. So Moderna, then we have 0011A, 1, 2, right? And we have first, second, and third dose, and then booster. And you'll have icons and stuff, whatever encoder that you use. I personally am extremely fond of Find a Code. I think I've said that enough. But let's say we're doing our initial dose. So we'll click on that. And we know that that's the description that I was showing you. And then if you are doing this in your manual, you're going to highlight this because it's after the semicolon, first dose. And also anything that makes this stand out. The preservative free, I just thought that was really interesting. So if some of them are preservative free and some of them aren't, right? This code was new on January 1st, 2022. Again, very important to have the newest manual when you're going to test because of things like this. Now, they went ahead and gave the content about the dosing, and this is what the clinicians use. So now that we know that, let's look at our choices. And again, this would be as if I was open up the page of the manual and I'm looking at my choices. I've looked in the index. It told me that I needed a code range 0011 through. And so this would be turning to that page in the tabular. Here's my choices. And it gives the description of what we already knew was going to happen, first, second, and third dose, and then the booster. This also tells me that what to look at behind the semicolon. So there's third dose. And then here, even though it's not after the semicolon, I would still probably highlight booster for testing purposes when you do your bubble and highlight. So what was really after that? Well, then it goes to AstraZeneca, right? Same thing, first, second, and look, there's only 2 doses for AstraZeneca, and obviously there's not a booster. So that means that if you were to go get a booster, you would get a booster that isn't AstraZeneca. Then we have, we go into the next and we go to Janssen. And honestly, I think Janssen is Johnson & Johnson. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure because it's 1 dose. And I know you've got your single dose and you've got a booster dose, okay? And then we move on to Novavax, and you notice there is Pfizer, but this Pfizer is different than the one that we looked at because this is the one with the sucrose, the 3 sucrose, tris sucrose, and you have, again, first, second, third dose, and booster dose. And then this is a little bit different in that this is 10, and notice that this was 30. Now, now that we did that, let's back up. Let's go back to what we looked at first. There is what is above 0011A in your manual. When you look at it, that's still the immunization, but this one is, let's see, this would be Moderna. This is the administration code. Administration code. So this is a little bit different. We have first dose of, now I think this is also Moderna because we have that. Now, again, this is not something that if you're a clinician, you're more aware of all of this stuff, but oh, this is dilutant reconstituted, and this one is not. It's preservative free. So that's what differentiates that Moderna from the, oh, that's Pfizer again. So I didn't tell you right, but see how delicate you have to be, and making sure that your eye is catching everything can get very, very confusing. Now, I've got some other things I wanted to show you in the meantime. Let's look here. This is from CPT Assistant, and it was talking about the new COVID-19 vaccines. I took that little usurp from here for the one slide, but this is that immunization. Let's see if I have that up there. I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and show you. Here is the content. Here's the tool, and then it lets you fill in the blank. So do you know the manufacturer? If I say no, okay, but let's say yes, I know, and we're going to put in that it is Moderna because that's the one we were looking at. And then it says which dose is being administered. Okay, first dose, because that's what we were looking at. And then which dose is being administered. Okay, first. Do we know the formulation? So we know that we had the choices, right? We had the tri sucrose or the tris sucrose or not. And let's pick the one that's not because I differentiated that on the slide. And which vaccine doses. Now we know which one it is because we were looking at the those on the slide deck. It was the 100 or the 30, and I can't remember, so I'm going to pick 100. Does this vaccine require an adjuvant? And in this particular situation, we say that it does not, but it was diluted means do they have to put water, liquid in to dilute it? Is the vaccine preservative free? No. So it was either diluted or preservative free. And again, this tool tells you all that content that you have to know. And then it scrolls down and tells you, here's the codes that you would use. And again, let's say no, because I think it won't give me the codes. Oh, here it is. See, now it'll say, okay, so you have the 91301 and you are going to use the 0011A because it's Moderna. And then there is that NDC for it. And I think you can even click on here. I don't know if it's what it's going to do. No, it goes back to the tool. Okay. So again, this is not something that you're probably going to use once you get in and your whatever dose the clinic that you're working with is using. Maybe they have multiple doses. You're going to have all that content there. The clinician is going to have it in the record. You're going to be able to bring it up and be able to pick from the codes which one that you need. But this tool is out there from the AMA if you need to use it. I wanted to look now a little more at this code, the 91300. It is also a new code. It was added that this was added 0073A because it's a booster was added to the content. So here's the the code, and then notice the same content that I told you we needed to be aware of, that you would use those. Now let's go in here and say, let's hit the 0073. It says do not use these two codes together, 91300. Let's go in and look at that code and say, well, what are we supposed to do? Well, it says you are going to use 91307. And remember, on that sheet that we just did, that tool, it stated 91307, right? And then it tells you do not report the 91300 or 05 with this code. So what makes this one different? It's because it's a third dose. Okay. And that's very, very important. Now, if you have an encoder that has these helpful tips, you can go in and look if Coding Assistant has anything. It doesn't have it on this particular code because it was on the previous code. Oops, that I was showing you, the 913. Let me go back. So I can go down here and look at the Coding Assistant. And there's 8 articles regarding that. Now, the Coding Clinic will mention this too because it will, but we're not dealing with ICD right now. And then it tells you, okay, in October 21, they dropped information, and they also did an update in September. You want to always look at the most current when you're doing this. I pulled that content from the October, but you could go through and read all of these additional, and see the progression of the changes that were happening at the time, and it can be very mind-blowing if you're not up to date, and if you're not used to coding injections and vaccines and stuff. It's very repetitive, especially when you're dealing with children, because there's timelines that they get them. All that information has to be captured. There's modifiers involved. And if you're coding for adults, then it's not just if you're used to coding for the flu shot and some of the others, the flu shot they'll give in the office, but you know what? They make them go get the shingles shot and sometimes the pneumonia shot at the pharmacy now, or they'll have you get it from the pharmacy, pick it up, and come in and they'll inject you, or the pharmacist just does it now. And again, making sure you get the proper code. You got to get the substance code, and the stick code can be a little hairy, and so we want to make sure that you know where all of your options are with those. And I think this is one last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention. So what I did was I opened up the October update. That's where I showed you on the previous screen. And this is where that tool was located at. And then it breaks down. Also, per age has a lot to do right here. Whether it's 18 and older, that happens with vaccination codes anyway, right? So if you're familiar with this, it's not really that difficult to incorporate these codes for COVID vaccines. However, if you're not familiar with it, oh, it can be very overwhelming at first. Now, let's look at these. The immunization for the administration is the 0001A, and then with this you would be bubbling these, right? And then it says here, notice it's telling us this is the first dose. Then we have the second, third, and booster. The codes are right there. And then if we're doing the, let's see, this one is, I'm sorry that I'm, the 51A, and notice the difference between this one is dilutant reconstituted first dose. This one is the tri-sucrose formulation first dose, second, third, and booster. And then over here we have dilutant reconstituted. This is the 0.2 milliliters. This is the 0.3. Again, these are the details. This one is the first and second dose. Then the vaccines. Now, again, This is the immunization, this is the administration, and this is the code for the vaccine itself. And uh, 91300 administrations. These are the stick codes. These are the content, the substance in the stick. Always remember those two things. Then it goes on to tell you, hey, by the way, these there are changes. Pay attention here. Pay attention to those parenthetical notes that guide you. And then they give clinical examples, which is wonderful. So let's go over these examples as we wrap up. You've got a parent or guardian of an 8-year-old. We don't care about the parent or guardian thing. The content tells us that this is an 8-year-old getting the dose. That's pertinent. And what are they getting? They're getting the COVID vaccine, intramuscular. Now, it's telling us we're going to use the 91307 because of their age and what they're getting. And that is the proper code, 91307 for the substance. But the stick, okay, same thing here. What are we sticking them with? It is the 0071A. Right. Then we move on to the 8-year-old. What's different here? Well, we're 8-year-old child, and then they're getting, the parent is offered and agreed to give the vaccine for the child for this purpose. All right. So this one here is council first dose. Okay, this is what I was looking for. First dose. This one here is first dose intramuscular. Where am I not seeing the difference between 72A? Let's go back here and just put it in. Emergency use, that was granted. That's not it. Second dose. Okay, that just didn't say it. I couldn't get my eye to find second dose. 72A is second dose. 71A is first dose. What says administer first dose? That should state second dose. Let's tell about that. So frequently asked questions. We want to go over that. So if you have a physician who does not have that trisucrose type, the product, the 91307, can they create a pediatric dose from the adult dose, 91305? The answer is no, you can't do that. Now, with some vaccines and things, they can do that, right? They have the ability to do that, but they're telling you, no, you can't do that. And that's important. You won't be able to code that out that way. Now, next question. What's appropriate to report when the patient receives both vaccine and influenza at the same encounter? Very good. Okay, so in that scenario, again, are you sticking them twice? Or are you sticking them once? In other words, you're drawing up both substances in one syringe, because they do that with some things. Or are you sticking them twice? That's all pertinent. So it says you would report the vaccine product code 91307, because that's the first thing. And then the second dose would be 0072A. Now, note here that it includes counseling, so we don't have to worry about that. But while codes 90460 and 90672, which I'll link those, for the intranasal flu product includes counseling. If the flu vaccine were an injection, report the appropriate codes, meaning you got to go through and list out what the substance code is and the injection code, and they're based also on age. So it's based on the formula, the amount, let's see, injected, and then it tells you that the information regarding 2022 that changed. So here's those two codes. And again, here's the age, 18 years and older. Again, this looks very intimidating, I know, especially if you are not familiar with doing injections. But the takeaway for you is we need to know what the uh, substance is, and we have to have a code for the substance, and we have to have a code for the stick. Okay, these are still based on age of administration. Okay, so pay attention to that. It is also based on the dose, first, second, sometimes third, or booster, and you can see the differences in the amount that the patient is giving in the substance that's being administered. Okay, so that's a giveaway. And all of that content, all of that information has to be documented by the clinician that gives the injection. Right. So not only do they write everything that I told you about that's in that little gray, down the bottom section, the NDC number and stuff, they have to date it. They have to put a time. They have to initial or sign that they were the one that gave the injection, and the description, all that content is there. You just need to be able to decipher and abstract what components of that information you need to be able to grab the right codes, which would be the substance code and the stick code. And with COVID-19, there are specific stick codes and also the substance. Is the sequencing substance then the stick? You know what? Well, maybe you wouldn't really have to worry about that so much, Deborah, when you're in the real world, because the encoder, when you use the program, like if you're using Epic, it makes you separate the codes out, and so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But usually it's always that 9 code first, and then the 00 code. But again, that is not something I think that I would worry too much about, Deborah. It maybe for testing purposes they may ask you, but I don't think they do. But usually it's substance than stick. Yeah. Again, don't let this intimidate you guys. The more you expose yourself to this, and now you have the link for the AMA, go in and play around, but you need to know who are the manufacturers, and we went over those, and then you need to know who the substance and the stick codes and where to abstract that, and it'll all be in the clinician's notes for that patient, and easy peasy after that, right? You're aware of those codes now. If you ever have questions about them, don't forget you can come out to the CCO Club and ask those questions, like the one that was in that particular scenario by the CPT Assistant. If you have a child that you need to give a dose, and you only have adult doses, can you break those down and dilute those? No, absolutely not. And so again, let us know if you have any questions about that. There's some unique scenarios that might come across your desk. Share them in the CCO Club. That was real easy to find, and we just flashed the where to find that. That's cco.us/club. If you're not already a member, absolutely join. We have CEUs in there. We have a lot of fun in there, and you will find this content, the video, the slide deck, the transcript, as well as continued conversation there. And these resources that are linked for you. Thank you guys for joining us, and I look forward to meeting with you again. Bye-bye.
Do you need more medical certification and business training? Learn more at www.cco.us.